Hi boys and girls, this is Miss Bowen. For this week I put together some weather-themed art projects. This project is how to use line and illustrate weather. I was inspired by a famous painter named Claude Monet. Claude Monet is an impressionist artist, which means he's all about painting light and color. He's most famous for painting landscapes or outdoor paintings. What he tries to capture is how the light changes throughout the day and the movement of the air. If you look at these three paintings, you could probably guess what's happening in the air around him or what weather you would see. Does each painting make you feel a different way? Notice you'll see lots of brush strokes, and this is one technique that impressionists use to capture light and movement. On this playlist, I've also added a few other videos for you to look at. One is a story about Katie and the water lily pond, and you'll see her going on an adventure where she lives in different Monet paintings. Another video is where you can learn more about the artist Claude Monet. Here's a look at what our project will look like. You'll notice that I drew an object in each photo that's about nature. I also created a background full of line to capture the movement of the weather. Can you guess which type of weather I tried to create in each picture? For this project, there's some certain words that I'm going to be focusing on. How to use line in your artwork. How to fill the space, which means a subject or an object versus the background. How color can make the eye focus on one area. How to use contrast. Contrast means you use opposites, like opposite colors. Here I've used black and white background versus a color object. And when you use those opposites, it makes each part of your artwork stand out better. I've also used repetition, where I continued patterns, drawing lines over and over. When we combine all of these parts of the project together, we're actually creating what's called rhythm. Now you might know rhythm as beat in music, a beat that is steady and continues, but when you use rhythm in art, it's how you create a design that keeps your eye moving all around the artwork. Here are other artworks that use repetition, repeating lines or shapes or colors to create rhythm. To get ready for your illustration, you'll need some supplies. White paper, printer or copy paper will do just fine. You'll want at least two pieces. One is for brainstorming, one is for your project. You'll need a drawing utensil. Black marker would be best, but it will be fine if you use a pencil or a pen or a marker, any other marker you can find. And you'll want coloring supplies. How you would like to add color is up to you. For the examples, I used crayons. Let's start with a brainstorm. If you fold a piece of paper in half, it gives you two sections. On one half of the paper, I'd like you to list just 5 types of weather that you know. Take a moment to think about it. On the other side of the paper, I'd like you to draw types of line you think would illustrate that weather. As you can see on this example, I wrote the word windy for my weather, and then I tried to think of what lines would illustrate that. I used spirals and waves. If you're stuck trying to think of ideas, here are the different types of lines we know from art class. To start my project, first I had to decide what type of weather did I want to illustrate. And the first thing I drew was not actually the lines or the background, I drew that center object. And when I tried to decide the object, I tried to think of what would really help illustrate that weather, what would match. Mostly what I was thinking about were things that I found in nature, like trees or plants, but you could use other objects. As you see, I've chosen an umbrella for rainy. Maybe a house would do too. The next step is to start filling in your background. Using those lines you brainstormed earlier, what types of shapes or what type of lines could you put in the background at weather? Bumpy lines for clouds, circle for the sun, zigzag for grass, ovals for puddles. Now we need some more detail. Are there patterns you could repeat? Are there extra lines or shapes that will give it a little more spice to the background? How can you start filling in the space? You'll see here I added more wind lines. I added rays on the sun, raindrops in the sky. Here's where we're going to use that repetition to create rhythm to keep the eyes moving. Look for spaces, keep filling in with your lines that you've chosen. As you repeat, try to make your sizes change by making the lines bigger or smaller. And you might even think of even more lines to add that you haven't used yet. A good artist always tries to look for spaces that are empty and fill with more detail. While my pictures might have looked full of detail already, I still found some spaces that looked blank and empty. Can you take a look at your drawing and find some blank, empty spaces? Once you find those blank spaces, fill it with even more line. Your last step is to color in that first object you drew, and only that object, making that black and white background stand out against your colorful object in the center. Here I tried to do my best job coloring. Inside the lines, no scribbles. If you're feeling extra creative, or maybe you didn't have the same materials that I had, here's some other options to try. The first one, I used color markers. Instead of black and white background, I have a blue and white background. And then I made my object a color too. Can you guess which colors were warm, which colors were cool? Those were opposite colors to create contrast too. On the right side of the picture, I used construction paper. First, I cut out the object and glued or taped it in the middle. Then I used my black marker to add the lines and details. I hope you have fun making your illustration. Check out the other videos on the playlist and stay tuned for more art projects from Miss Bowen. See you later.